back, and my friend Ryan Hammond is here, and I hope you've been watching already, because if you did not, you have to go back later and catch up on YouTube and listen to what he just sang, because it was phenomenal. But just like your mom was just saying, it's, you have the technique and all those things, but the soul of what you're saying comes from Jesus, and the emotion of what you're conveying is from him. And his I mean, I just was picturing him saying that to me when you were singing, that I will never leave you, I will never forsake you, I have your hand in the storm, and each of us can be ministered to differently through the Holy Spirit, through the words, and have our own experience of God, and that's so powerful. So tell me about yourself. I mean, I know you grew up in a Christian home.
Yes,
right?
They say I was born under a pew.
Okay.
I've been in church since birth. My parents' church is called Celebration Center. Back then it was called Lighthouse Family Worship Center, and it's in the airport district of Modesto. And my great-grandpa helped build it.
Oh, wow.
My mom's, her grandpa.
Yeah.
And both sides of my family have been there for generations now. And it's funny how I actually called her Auntie Cole before she was my mom.
Yeah.
My birth mom did pass away when I was young.
Yeah. How old were you when that happened?
4 or 5, I think.
Do you remember that?
I do remember. I have a really good memory, so I can remember things here and there, moments and certain events and stuff. And I luckily wasn't without a mom for too long, and I have my mom, Nicole, who's back there on the set, and she's my greatest supporter, and it never sat well with me as my stepmom. I've never looked at her as somebody not.
Right.
She's
your mom.
She's my mom.
That's right.
And
you're blessed to have two mom experiences.
Yeah. So she's been the best. So when we were young, we were such close family friends with her side of the family that they were like cousins. They were my aunts or my uncles, or you have those close friends where your children, their uncle, aunt. So she was my Auntie Cole, and then she became mom. And so it's kind of funny how both sides of the family have been in that church for so many generations. So I was raised in church. My dad's the worship pastor, associate. My mom runs the women's department for a lot of different churches, but I'm out of Celebration Center. And so I was raised in church. And a little bit about my story is being raised in church, being a pastor's kid. For me, there was such a perfection thing in it that I found. And it wasn't, my parents never told me, you must be perfect, you must be perfect. It just was something that the enemy planted in my head at a young age, like you must look the part. You must have the part. And that's something I feel like so many pastors' kids struggle with.
Absolutely.
And that's why a lot of them grow up and end up leaving church, and as I did, luckily not for too long. But so I grew up in church. I was in the children's ministry, was back in the sound booth, was at the worship rehearsals, was at the meetings, was at the deliverance sessions.
You knew all the answers.
I knew all the answers. I knew how to work the show.
Yeah. Exactly.
I just was a part of everything. My parents have been there even longer than the current senior pastor. So
it was your church.
It was my church, our family.
Yeah.
Or if you looked at the worship team back in the day, it was uncle playing the drums, other uncle playing the guitar, dad's on the piano, the sisters and moms and aunts and cousins are the singers. So our family really stepped up and helped lead that church. And so in seeing them all step up, I was like, okay, well, time to do my duties. So I ended up doing our leadership academy when I was about 10 or 11, I think, and graduated from that and started a small group and was leading some of the kids. My parents had their own life groups in the home on Wednesday nights, and I would lead all the children. We would do Bible study, and we would learn the verses, and I would help mentor some of the kids and walk them through certain things. And I was helping run the children's department. By the time I was like 13, I was in there I was actually teaching kids that were older than me, which was fun. It could be fun. And so I had helped in the children's department. I helped in the youth. I did worship in the youth and had spoke and done, we had weekends called encounter retreats where you get rid of all the junk and encounter God's presence. And I helped in those. I spoke. I did whatever was necessary. I joined the worship team with my dad. I was about 16 or 17 around then. And I learned how to do the ins and outs of church.
Would it be fair to say that you had all the head knowledge, but your heart wasn't transformed yet?
Absolutely.
Would that be a way
I had experienced him and I had felt his presence, but I didn't know it for myself.
Right.
I had seen my grandparents weep in his presence, and they knew him, and they spoke to him, they prayed with him. I even knew how to mimic their prayers. And my parents were helping lead these people, and I had seen everybody do it, and so I knew what to do.
Yeah, so you knew all the things of God,
Exactly.
but not necessarily God
I knew
himself.
About him.
You knew about him, right?
Fully about him.
Exactly.
I knew his word. I knew what he did.
Exactly.
I knew how
you
he
knew all the
felt
works to
sometimes.
do.
I knew all the works. And
Yeah.
I knew how to work for him. And that's the key thing is I've asked God, what does my story tell? And what do you want people to hear when I tell my story? And he said that I'm not their boss. And he didn't come here and die on the cross to be our CEO.
That's right.
And
that's right.
That's the biggest thing is I learned how to work for him, and I felt like an employee.
So you were performing.
I was fully performing.
I mean, would you say, and I've talked to a lot of people on my show that have similar experiences that grew up in the church and it became more of a performance. And it's not like you intend for that to happen. It just happens.
It does.
And before you realize it.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to what I said earlier about, striving and working and earning and taking on things we're not meant to take on.
Exactly.
And God just wants us to just be with him.
Exactly.
It's such a difference.
Yeah. So in working, doing all this work and doing all these tasks, they became duties.
That's right.
It became a job that I didn't want to do. It became an obligation.
That's
and,
right.
My parents were like, "No, you're going to church.
Yeah.
This is not optional. As for me and my house, we will serve
That's
the Lord."
right, exactly.
So
that's right.
So I went to church even when I didn't want to, which is great. I'm glad they did that. But
yeah.
And
how old were you during all this time?
This
Your
was
teenage years?
Yeah, I'd say throughout my teenage years, I started to feel more of an employee, is what I would call it.
Yeah.
I felt more obligated and less desire.
Right.
And I just began to feel myself distancing further away, and I became so familiar with him that I didn't value him
That's
anymore.
Right. Kind of take him for granted, maybe?
Definitely take him for granted, and I stopped sensing his presence because I had kind of put a block there. I didn't care anymore.
Do you know how common this is, by the way? I mean, that's why I know that your story would speak to people, because
and I felt
church is
so
filled with
alone
people
in that
like
time.
yeah.
And I felt like, oh gosh, I'm gonna look horrible. Like I didn't feel like I could even go to the altar for prayer because I had to keep up this perfect appearance. That's how perfection had gotten so deep into me that I just felt like I had to perform that, even going to the altar to say a prayer like, hey guys, I'm struggling. No, they can't know I'm struggling. My family will look bad.
That's
what I thought. That wasn't what was.
And that was the enemy planted
Absolutely.
in you. Absolutely.
I definitely let him take over my thoughts, and I didn't manage my soul at that time. I just fell into work mode, and I lost my value for him, and therefore I didn't care anymore.
So you actually turned away.
I did.
So tell us about that.
I actually started to turn away while I was still in church. I noticed that I was doing the whole Monday through Saturday doing one thing, and Sundays doing another, and I was able to keep this up. I felt like an actor, honestly.
Yeah.
I should have gotten paid. I was really good at it.
Yeah.
And I was able to carry on this act for a while until I graduated high school, and I ended up moving out on my own, and I found an escape route through a job. I took a job on a Sunday morning on purpose.
Right.
I sought it out, like, hey, do you have work on Sunday mornings?
Yeah.
I was really, because I didn't know how to quit, and I didn't want everybody to know that it was because I didn't want to serve God anymore. I just wanted them to think I needed to work to live now.
That's right.
And so I found this escape route, and I called my dad. I was like, hey, just want to let you know I'm going to go ahead and put in my resignation to the worship team. I have to work, to be able to pay my bills. And you just could hear the sadness in his voice, and he knew what was going on. And he said, okay, well, we're going to keep praying for you and hope to see you back soon.
Yeah.
And I ended up stopped going to church in, it's about December of 2012, I believe, 2011, right after graduating high school. and I just definitely went through a quick downward spiral. I was working at the time in care homes, and so easily, whenever you fall off track and you're not serving God anymore, the enemy just, you open that door for him.
That's right.
And
That's
I
right.
honestly fully opened the door. I was like, I know God is real, but I don't care right
I'm doing
now.
my own thing right now.
I'm doing my own thing,
Yeah.
and a spirit of rebellion really, really, really took me captive. And
That hardness of heart starts setting in, and it's easier and easier to
yes,
rebel at that point.
yeah, the calluses were growing.
Yeah.
And then, honestly, things I didn't necessarily want to do, I did out of rebellion, just because I knew it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do the right thing. I was done doing the right thing. I had
That's
done
right,
the right thing
Ryan.
for so long.
I've heard this so many times. Your
know,
story
I
is
know.
so
Yeah, so
speaking.
I ended up starting to steal medication from the hospitals, which was not like me at all. I had never done drugs up until this point. I had never had a desire to do that. I knew better. My parents' church has a lot of people from rehab
Recovery.
and who are in recovery, getting their life back on track. So I knew what it looked like to go down that road. But I was like, well, we helped all those people, so I'm going to become one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I started stealing the medication. Luckily, I never did use the medication, but I was stealing these hard medications and giving them. I ended up making a friend who was a dealer, and I would take the medications and give them to them, and they would go disperse them.
Do you think that was partly to fit in?
To fit in, for me, it just really was rebellion. And I knew it was. The hard part about looking back is like, oh my gosh, I knew better. I knew what I was doing. I wasn't doing it unintentionally.
I hate to interrupt you, but we got to take a break. On that note, stay right there. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.